Hello, everyone. Welcome to this incredible Women in Change event hosted by Marg and Sudeshna's team. I'm really disappointed that I could not be there in person, but really looking forward to hearing about all the incredible opportunities for you to connect and have conversations about the important role that women play in leadership and in change. I've had the honor and privilege to work with Sudeshna on a podcast on this topic and really believe it is an incredibly important element of our industry. I'm Michelle Haggerty, the COO and president of ProSci US, and having the opportunity to work within the change management industry for the last 14 years and in a leadership capacity for several of those, I see a difference in the way that ProSci is successful, the way our customers are successful because of women in change. We can't do it alone, but we absolutely play a powerful role in leading the industry forward. From strategic mindset to empathy to attention to detail and all the characteristics in between, women have such an important role to play in making changes more successful for individuals and for organizations. We bring really unique perspective in the way that we do the work, the way we think about the work, the way we listen to people going through change, the way that we create and craft solutions for people going through change. I hope you have a wonderful time together today. And again, I look forward to hearing about all the incredible discussions and outcomes of your dialogue today. Enjoy.
Wow, that was a great start to this. So thank you, Michelle, for being an incredible leader, as always supporting us, and also being that women leader. And that makes us always so glad, we are so glad to get associated with you. You mentioned a very important point of that having that women's perspective and that intuitive nature, which can be really an asset during change. So with that, I, Sudeshna Basuroy from Marg Business Transformation, welcome this delightful group of leaders in change for this session. So welcome everybody.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so as I was mentioning that when ProSci did this went live with Women in Change, we felt like this was happening, this was coming very soon here, but we were just waiting for that right mix, right group of people, and what we wished to have was a very diverse group. And why am I calling it diverse will be very evident with the intros coming in. So some intros are in order, and the order is very random. So it's in no particular order. So named as one of the top 10 innovators in the country, Shruti plays a very, I find her role very, very interesting because she has to bring together Cisco Tech, Deep Tech, and the partner ecosystem in making end-to-end digitalization and their go-to-market infrastructure possible to all your startups, your unicorns, and all that you call your world. So please welcome Shruti Kannan, the head of Cisco Startups, Cisco for Startups, and BizDev leader of Digital Native Enterprises.
Thank you, Sudeshna.
Okay. So, featured in Business World as one of the top 50 marketers of the country. She is responsible for design, she's responsible for supply chain, she's responsible for category and marketing of the Indian wear brand in Titan, Tanaira. So please welcome Shalini Gupta, who is the general manager, Tanaira, of the Titan Group. And she does all of it. And in the interview, she mentions that don't be a perfectionist. So I wonder why, and we'll come back to that. Head of Human Resources in JCPenney. This is Nirguna with us. The word which I commonly associate with her is multi. We were talking about she's been always used to having these multiple roles, and she is the powerhouse managing multiple aspects of HR, be it performance management, talent development, talent management, rewards. She does it all, and I think she manages multiple stakeholders in multiple geographies in the current role. And in all this, what she promises is to quantify what all she brings to the table. So welcome, Nirguna.
Thank you for that intro, Sudeshna.
In God we trust. The rest should bring data. And that's where Nitya comes from. And being very adept in AI, ML, your analytics. But what she tries to bring with data is decisions. She speaks so passionately about data literacy, data democracy, data governance. But what all she tries to do is decision making with data. So, head of analytics in Kellanova, erstwhile Kellogg's, is Nitya Lakshmi Subramanian with us.
Thank you so much.
So with that, without much ado, I'll start with asking, please, we will keep this at a very conversation level and let's bring that cafeteria conversation back here. Yeah. So, what is your change superpower?
I wish there was a superpower, Sudeshna, but I feel that something that surely brings a lot of value to any change. What I feel I could do is to anticipate change much in advance, especially the resistant blocks that we will face in any format of change. And perhaps a little bit of excitement that I get out of ambiguity adds to the whole fun. And last but not the least, I think all of our ability to be inclusive around change, around how a change will be implemented with empathy and a little bit of emotional intelligence always.
Thank you. Your change in superpower.
So there cannot be one superpower to change. Definitely there are many. So I'll name a few which I think are my superpowers and the way I am able to exhibit them in my day-to-day job. So one is definitely customer centricity. It's way too important, more than ever before in the current in the current world, where being customer centric, being hyper personalized in the solutions that you're offering is very, very important, so that you stay competitive and relevant in the market. So that's super critical to be customer centric. Empathy is very important, because you are not impacting the change, or you're not implementing the change alone, right? You're having a team, you're having partners, allies, and of course the end customer as one of your significant key stakeholders. So you need to be at every point in time and be empathetic, put yourself in their shoes, live their life in a way that you are able to understand them much better, and therefore anticipate the problems that you would need to solve, anticipate your actions in advance, and are able to kind of successfully implement change. Another one is about being agile, right? Being nimble, right? It's very important in the dynamic world that we are living today, to be always kind of ready to kind of incorporate subtle changes in the way you work, in the products that you deliver, etc. Mm-hmm. So these are three superpowers that come to my mind immediately.
So, if I had to talk about what I think is my change superpower, I feel I have a genuine love for learning. So, the love for learning, what it does is it makes me take on new roles, take on new experiences, and you need to, every time you change a role, every time you take on something new, you need to learn from the senior most to the youngest person. And the act of learning from somebody that young, I think what it does is you truly see your team as an equal and not necessarily in some hierarchical order. And I think that is something that I feel has helped me and my team, because we become one among equals, and then it is easier to work together. They are empowered. We are truly doing a lot of different things. And that, I think, has been my superpower in change.
My superpower would be eternal optimism. Right from the Newton laws days, we have always seen change with the negative lens. We're all in a state of inertia, and we don't want to move away from that unless a force comes in, either externally or internally. But I think the lens that we start applying, from a positive angle, will definitely make things better, not just for others, but for our own selves. So eternal optimism would be my superpower.
Great. So with that, I'm starting with you. What is the best piece of advice you had received early in your career, which has helped you shape yourself as a leader?
I would like to share something that my grandma has kind of repeatedly given me a diet of right from my childhood. So this is the quote: "Heights by great women and men are not by a sudden flight. Height by great men and women are not by a sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards in the night." We all see success stories everywhere. We think that, hey, they've just reached that peak and, such a wow change has happened. We do not realize the quantum of efforts, the passion, the contribution of the support system that has gone on. That is immense, that's huge, that has contributed in a very big way for the success. So I think it's important to accept and acknowledge that there is a support system. There is not just an individual at act in any of these things, and there is a whole ecosystem in play which kind of comes together to solve for a problem, to contribute towards a positive impact around us. So that would be the best ever advice that I've ever received.
Wow.
So I think my memory goes back to my first job and my stint as a management trainee. And I'd gone to my vice president to ask him that, it's been 6 months, any inputs, any advice? And he said that, one thing that I really like is you're very solution centric. And I think that is a key. And you have to remember that through life, never go to your manager with a problem. You go with a solution, whether it's, possible or not. But go with a plan A and B already formulated in your mind, and don't wait for anybody to give you a solution. I think that has just stayed with me. So there are other things, but this one I think was one of the first pieces of professional input that highlighted a strength and also told me that that is key. So that is one early advice that I remember.
Yeah. A lot of effort is needed to get into that mindset.
Like you also said, Sudeshna, I've been fortunate to do various roles, being part of various teams, which also meant that I was changing teams frequently. I was doing new things all the time, which was fun for me. But that's where, in the very beginning of my career, the advice that I got was to be authentic, be real, and to always know that nobody succeeds alone. Right? It's a whole team, it's a whole company that succeeds together. So to be able to win and to be able to share that success, celebrate that success together, became very important for me as an individual and slowly as a leader as well. And that's what I have been talking about with my teams, with my people as well. Slowly that culminates and develops into a culture that becomes widespread, becomes the way of life for everyone. And then added with that is the authenticity of how we operate has always ensured that people see the real you, whether it is success or failure, but people see the real you, authentic you, know that we are all in this together, we are going to succeed together, we're going to work together. The transparency, the communication, the vulnerabilities at times when we are going through so many things, even if not change, those being discussed, being brought up front becomes extremely important. And those are a few things which have really helped me not only move forward in my journey, but also take people along.
One great piece of advice that I got fortunately in the early stages of my career by one woman leader whom I used to inspire and look up to a lot was, in fact, one day I went to her and asked, what do you suggest could be the mantra that I could hold on to be a successful woman leader? And she said very simply, one is, of course, believe in yourself. But she also said that don't get overly hung up on the solutions and do not lose the sight of the problem, right? Because and then she explained it, very dearly to me, saying that, okay, if you get hung up on the solution, right, you do not innovate. You keep repeating the same thing over and over again because you like whatever you're doing so much that you get just literally stuck there. You don't change. Whereas, and then you of course lose the sight of the problem. Whereas if you don't get so much passionate or hung up on a particular solution and you do not, or you always kind of be close to the problem, you tend to innovate, because you know that when the the requirements or the problem landscape is changing, and when you have to kind of tweak your solution accordingly. So that's what can lead you to success. So love the problem, don't love the solution. Yeah.
So authentic innovation you would be doing, I guess. So, what do you think are needed in a successful change?
So one thing that I have seen beyond all the superpowers for change, which is empathy, customer centricity, and nimbleness, etc. One thing which is required is to involve all the stakeholders much ahead in your innovation and change cycle, right? Because what generally happens, right, and I've seen in organizations, is that once we receive the problem statement to work on, we go back into our ivory towers, and then we kind of synthesize the problem, we come up with a solution and a big bang approach, and then we land it onto the stakeholders, and the stakeholders kind of lose the track of what the problem was and what the solution is solving for them, etc. And there is a lot of friction, therefore, in adopting to that change, right? Versus if we involve the stakeholders right at the beginning, right in kind of co-identification of the problems that we want to solve, co-creation of the solution, right? In such a case, the stakeholders become a part of your solution design. They become a part of your innovation cycle, and then they are highly invested in, right? And so the landing of the change becomes very frictionless.
I think I love what Nitya said about involving the stakeholders early on in the process, right? Because any change management cannot start when we are into the change, right? The management part of it starts with people much ahead of when we are getting into the change. And these aspects really help that going. I also feel that clarity of vision gives that much more ease of implementation. So I think visioning what we are after, what the success looks like, not necessarily getting married to the solution like we heard, but perhaps what the success will look like helps a lot in getting everybody together. Because when that clear vision is communicated across a team, because of course it's going to be mammoth, it's not going to be only you who will be driving the change. There are many who need to understand your vision, your organization's vision, with the clarity that we do, or I do, or you do, right? Hence, that clarity becomes extremely important. Second, of course, communication. I think no amount of communication in change is over communication. It continues to reinforce the clarity, reinforce the vision for the change that we are into. Also, supports our people to offer solutions, be part of the solutioning. Ask questions, queries, settle their anxieties, because those forums become very important when we are running perhaps a process or a change exercise. Having those surely not only take people away from their, the obvious anxieties or fears or whatsoever we call them, but also get them far more involved in how we can move forward. So that shift from anxiety to a mindset of change. It helps a lot, and it's extremely important, is what I feel. And of course, then this being packaged with the resilience and the and our perseverance is important. So these are a few things, I suppose. There, of course, is not one thing that can take us a long way. It's a packaging of all these things coming together, how an organization or a team moves forward.
Great.
So I think they've said it all, but I completely agree that having that strong vision and the path to it, once that is very well understood, so getting the teams together on that becomes definitely key. And I think one thing that I've also seen is that sometimes when you try and get all the stakeholders to understand together, it may or may not work, and hence aligning with them in smaller groups so that they are able to voice their concerns, any views and any solutions. And then once the milestones are being checked or the metrics are being aligned, then having them together is okay. but otherwise completely there that, get the teams to own it, understand the background. And I think that is one place where women come in also more strongly, that having that patience, understanding what could be some of the concerns that the stakeholders may have, and getting them to own the change, and then empowering them to execute it. I think that is one thing that where women also end up playing a little bit of a bigger role.
I think all of you said it all. I'm going to articulate it in a slightly different way. Suppose Sudeshna is taking us from Bangalore to the moon. So what matters here? Number one, the people, all of us who are going to be the stakeholders in this, who are going to traverse on this journey. Number two, where are we headed to? The destination, the vision, the North Star. Are we aligned on that? Do we know where we are heading to? Third, do we have the vehicle to go there? Are we empowered? Do we have the tools? Do we have the skill set to traverse on that journey? I think all of these are most important. Perhaps to just pepper up that journey, we can have more entertainment, music on the way, celebrate the successes. All of these are perhaps add-ons to that journey, making it more interesting rather than being more monotonous. So
I think that's a very key point. That, and you said it too, that it's not just the outcome. It is the path to the outcome which is as important. And if you're just looking at that, we miss out the fun of the journey. Very true.
Why don't you continue with the next question? The next question obviously comes because you all covered the things which you all covered are, I find, very strong with women. So then, do women make better change leaders?
I think what I have experienced is that women, and I think all of us said it in different ways, that there is more empathy, there is more listening, and probably little less desire, like you said, that less desire to be the hero and not say that, we've come with this grand solution and now we want you all to take it on and roll with it. And that makes them more accessible. People are more open to voice any concerns, any fears or any doubts that they may have. And to that extent, they may play that key role of supporting that journey and, ensuring that teams are taken along more willingly with more empowerment. And I think therein, which is where strength comes in.
I think biologically, women and change are equivalent, right? So we go through changes on a monthly basis. We go through, the cycles with giving birth and all of the changes that we go through during our lifetime. Where I think we also add value is we're just not black and white. We are so colorful. We bring in such a splash of colors everywhere we go, of course, augmenting the economy in the retail space as well. We bring in not just straight lines, we bring in so many curves and we bring in so many different shapes, which is also synonymous with the thought processes, right? We're just not about binary. We bring in so many elements which I think have to be considered. You have to read between the lines. It's just not a true or false question. Can we understand more? Can we understand, deep dive, dig this better? And perhaps that will give us more solutions than we originally anticipated. I think these are key in change management.
The forum being what it is, I'm extremely tempted to say, yes, women are better change leaders. But my honest opinion is that perhaps gender plays a smaller role in leading change or leadership in general. Because it's a combination of multiple skills. What's very true, what we already heard from other leaders here, is some of the skills like empathy, emotional intelligence, ability to manage change, resilience, comes far more naturally to women. But just by being women cannot make someone eligible to be a great change leader. That also requires combination and harnessing other skills, other superpowers, if we call them so, to be able to be successful in driving changes.
There's nothing left for me to kind of add. Everyone has covered pretty much everything, starting from diversity of thought to empathy to perseverance and all of that, right? So awesome skills to possess as a change leader. Of course, maybe I can probably add one bit that, women are more agile than than men, and then also because of the way we have lived through our life, we are we are much better in adjusting to changes, right? And we are much better in being patient with the changes rather than kind of going against the changes. We are much better in adopting the changes, right? So I think these are very, very important aspects, right? Which as traits, we are a better half gender than the than the men in this regard. Yeah.
So just why don't you continue as where you have been instrumental in driving a change? So give us an instance. Now we want to hear stories.
Sure. I mean, there have been many instances because, I've been heading data and analytics teams for quite some time. And in a lot of cases, what we see is that, the business or the stakeholders aren't very much aware of a particular problem's existence, right? They are not aware that there are opportunities in their ways of working, in their business processes, that could be kind of opportunities in terms of optimization, right? Opportunities in terms of making things more efficient, right? So these are latent problems that we have to deal with. So in one of my experiences when I was heading the data and analytics for supply chain, there were a lot of these closed groups, like who thought that they know their problems well, they have all the solutions in place, they don't need any transformation, etc. So whereas I was in a position to kind of ensure that they are able to identify what are the best practices going forward, because it doesn't, again, going back to my point of not getting hung up with a particular way of working on the solution, right? It's, as a change leader, it was my responsibility to kind of work with them and ensure that they are aware that there are opportunities to improvise. So this was a bit of a difficult situation for me within these teams that were essentially operating in silos, to kind of break into their shell, work with them.
You were touching the comfort zone.
Right. Work with them and say that there is something that needs to be changed. And this change is good, to make them believe that, I had to go through a lot of iterations in terms of bringing the perspectives from industry that, look, this is what industry is doing, and this is going to really benefit us, and this is how it's going to impact our business outcomes, and then come up with some POCs and things like that to kind of make them believe in what I was saying, right? So this was some bit of a tricky part, and this happens in most of our work environments where teams tend to operate in silos, and you have to break into those silos. Yeah.
I think I'll talk about two aspects. The easier one first. Processes, right? I'm sure all of us have been part of multiple process changes, and I've done this in multiple places, bringing new capabilities in India, skills in India from other geographies. Not very unique to any organization, right? All of our organizations do that. When I did this the first time, I was like, okay, clear vision, great. We have been communicating enough, all on board, cool. One thing that was slightly surprising was the anxiety again, and the fear that people still had. While somebody will think that this is great, right? New skills coming in, new capabilities coming in, which means we will do better things, bigger things, grow. Then why are we struggling with this aspect of fear still? But I think another aspect to the whole process of change was enabling, empowering people with tools, resources, which will be needed to move forward. And I think that was a huge learning for me personally and for our teams when we were doing this initially. And then, taking it forward as we do it over and over again, how to move from process to the mindset. And perhaps that is slightly more difficult and a little bit more nebulous, ambiguous to work with, deal with. That how do we really make this as part of our culture? That change is not something that we bring in at one point in time. Change is part of how an organization moves in today's world, and that needs to be part of each and everyone's DNA, right? That should need to become the way we operate. That perhaps managing that piece, the mindset piece over processes, has surely been slightly more challenging and more exciting than just the process bit of it.
So one change, that I recall with is something we were discussing just before this, was that when I took over my recent role, and my MD asked that besides business, it's part of our ethos. What is it that we can do to modernize the whole ecosystem of weavers? And one is the current generation, but in the context of weavers, it is a generational mindset that they take yarn, they go to their houses, they weave it, they take breaks, they go to the farm. And what we had to do as part of that modernization exercise was bring them out, put up modern facilities, and ask them to do a 9 to 5 kind of exercise. And I think that this change was something which was business-wise very satisfying, but also was very soul-satisfying. And the key here was that I think we were able to put together the right external and internal team. So we had some veterans from outside, we had our own teams. So leading this was, I think, something that will stay with me for a long time, because what we can see is that it's a 5,000-year-old industry that we were starting to make an impact on. And what we did was we picked cities across the country. So when you do change in one location, there is a cascading effect around. More people get involved. They come and see, okay, what is this new way of working? And maybe we can also incorporate. So hence, it was tougher, but that's the choice we made. And we can see already just 1 year down the line that so many more people are coming up and showing interest. And I think we just got that formula right. And this is one change to me, I think, that being part of has been very satisfying.
Thank you.
So I'm going to talk about the change that I've influenced at 3-4 levels. One, within the organization, where I help employees wear an entrepreneurial hat. You don't necessarily have to be a CEO, CTO, but you could be an engineer, you could be a HR personnel and still be an entrepreneurial a person with an entrepreneurial mindset. I think that's one of the key change that I advocate within the organization, helping them tap into these startup mindset and think about accountability, ownership, responsibility. What am I bringing into the business? What value am I adding to this? So that's the first level. Second, this is about extrapolating into what capabilities do I have that I can then bring on to the larger community around me, to the society. So now, as part of the digital transformation office at Cisco, where I lead the co-innovation, open innovation function, we work extensively with the startup ecosystem and have been creating a lot of positive impact through projects in the areas of connected agriculture, in the areas of healthcare, retail, aviation. So in each of these, these have been age-old industries, and they have their own setup. But going in with a fresh perspective, using technology as the superpower and tapping into the potential of what is possible, co-ideating with each of them to say that, hey, together we can actually do something which is going to give customer delight and customer bliss. I think that's a big driver that we are influencing, not just as change, but also we are, in fact, eliciting these as activating these agents, which will bring back the goodness to each of us, because we are as consumers going to be flying in that next plane. We are going to be buying from that retail store, or we are going to be, God forbid, not having to go to that hospital, for healthcare services. So for me, technology here is acting as the agent of change, where we are able to tap into the co-innovation capabilities by bringing together multiple entities and then making for a better world around us. And this, I think, kind of has a butterfly effect, because when this becomes a motion, a global motion, a national motion of sorts, then this contributes to the larger goals that we have. We're all talking about net zero, circular economy, the sustainability development goals. So I think all of these are, tiny drops of water which will make up for a big ocean of really purpose-driven businesses that we ought to be doing. Not just talk about profits, but how can we, with our passion, contribute towards a purpose. So I think that's the biggest change all of us have to aspire for.
Wow. So, how do you think, as a women leader, you can support women in their career?
I have been personally a beneficiary of the women networks right from very early in my career. I think you look up to certain role models, people who are like you, who've been there, done that. I think that is the first thing that really kind of hits you saying, hey, they have done that, maybe you can do. So that looking up, being a role model and inspiring others is definitely something that I have been greatly benefited by. So which I try to kind of pass on the goodness, try to mentor as many women folks in my network who reach out for certain, goals. Not just women, in fact, I also mentor a lot of men also who ask me, hey, how have you done this? Is this possible? It's all about connecting the dots in a coherent manner. The power of community, the power of networks, I think is a huge one to be tapped. Just like right now in this group, we are such a diverse set, and one table conversation over coffee has given us so many ideas of some untapped potential in the area of reviving the traditional arts. So I think the power of community and networks is really a brahmastra that we have in our hands, and as women leaders, we're also quite adept at tapping into this huge potential of networking. I think we should, use it for the right outcomes that we want to achieve.
I couldn't agree more. I think that is the key, and hence just being part of a support group, actively listening, being able to share experiences. I think that itself has so much power sitting. So this collective, and that's why if you see in the context of social media, why communities thrive, because there is this sense of taking people along, bringing people together, and the shared intelligence and the shared knowledge has immense potential. So I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. I think all said there. Power of networking. Nothing can replace that, perhaps. Not only now, in the past and the future also, I suppose. Networking will remain important. And how, so I'm taking cue from how I was being helped, right? What benefited me as when I was growing into different roles, and perhaps replicate some part of it back into the system, and also find out what are the new asks, new needs that we see in budding women leaders or professionals around us. Networking for sure. Of course, supporting with any mentoring needs, like we heard, right? How can we support? One more thing that I realized has helped me personally a lot and can help others, I feel, is candid feedback. Sharing candid feedback when asked, or when we are in a psychological safe space to be able to share, becomes key for someone to really pace up development. That has been another perspective. And I feel women in leadership can do one more very powerful thing, which is enabling an environment, a culture, which is more inclusive, and bringing the unconscious biases consciously to everybody, because they exist, and how they impact is something that needs to be discussed more. So women in leadership roles can surely support in those aspects as well, right?
So there are in fact two counterintuitive aspects of this. One is removing the gender color of this entire thing. As leaders, we need to be unbiased, right? And we need so I'm always conscious that, and of course a part of me says that I need to be uplifting other women, but at the same time I want to stay within the realm that I don't look overly biased towards a certain group of society, or so therefore with that always in the back of my mind, one thing that I always that I want that I wish to tackle with each of my women employees and all the women that I meet is that their own perception about how women should be, right? Because our perception about ourselves is the the function of our experiences in the life, the way we have been brought up, what we have been told by our parents and society, that this is how women should be, right? So that is the mind block that I wish to tackle, because this will give women an equal opportunity, right? An equitable opportunity like men, right? So this gap which exists today between the women workforce and the men workforce is primarily because of this mindset that women have got a certain thing to do and their career choices are limited, right? So this is what I try to tackle, this mind block with the women that I talk to. I mentor them, saying that, to her point, that a lot of women who can be your role models, who have really broken out of these shells and they have really succeeded, right? So you can do as well, right? Yeah, this is what I try to do. Otherwise, I try to be as unbiased as possible in my approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as now as change leaders, what would be your advice to the change lead, meaning the people like with plethora of change coming our way and organizations we are seeing struggling each day to go through that, and we are hearing about saturations happening in change. So with that, like as a change leader, what is your advice to
Yeah, and I think we have really spoken a lot about the characteristics of an effective change leader. One thing that I would also additionally advise is have a growth mindset, right? Because and then have a growth mindset and be an example to your employees or people who are looking up to you, that having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is something that can help you not just implement change but also incorporate change in yourself, right? So growth mindset is very, very important, and being agile, right? Don't work in silos. Don't think what you're doing is perfect. Of course we always strive for perfection, but even innovation and perfection comes after multiple iterations, right? So be open to the nimbleness, be open to kind of incorporating feedback and changing the way you do things, right? So these are a couple of things that beyond all that we have spoken, very well said, amazing points that were brought in this group. Beyond all of that, I think this is what I would like to add.
True, not wanting to repeat so many great aspects being covered. I think what additionally we can also do is lead change by building trust in the system. That goes a long way. That eases out pressure on visioning, communication, getting people together, and all of those things. When the fabric is put together with a layer of trust, it just helps enable all the aspects of change that we are wanting to with that much more ease. Celebrate wins, which most of high achievers sometimes forget to do. I think that also becomes very important. Be kind, and be kind to yourself, because I think at times we get too harsh upon ourselves as well, especially women leaders, women in general. And it's needed to be kind to yourself, to others at any point in time.
So well said. So I'm just going to add only one or two things. I couldn't agree more on the fact that, so, you asked me, Sudeshna, during the earlier point on why did I write that don't aim for perfection. I think that is something that, I've learned over years. And like, we've said that women tend to, there is a little bit of maybe, the way we are biologically, that we do tend to lean in towards feeling more guilty, wanting to be these superwomen, and having this sense of reaching, having to, I think, probably proving ourselves more, and hence working much more harder. And I think my thing on change has been that not to aim for perfection. You just keep going. experimenting, learning, trying to, course correct along the way instead of first getting the formula 100% right, and focusing on trying it in small scale first. So this pilot has been my mantra for all big changes, that start small and then keep going, because that way you have a choice to course correct, you learn and then add.
So, coming from the startup zone, I'm going to articulate all of this from an entrepreneurial lens. This is based on a research by Professor Saraswati, where she had researched a lot of businesses, successful and failed ones, over several years, hundreds of them. Entrepreneurship, as you know, is not a easy journey. There are so many obstacles on your path, opportunities, challenges are written on your way. So when the research study actually examined the path of so many startup founders, they found that just going by, hey, I want to get to that point A to point B is not what really works in a realistic situation. So they call out this principle, the framework of effectuation. So what is this effectuation telling us? It tells us that similar concepts like agility does, that we are piloting constantly. We start with the resources we have. We start with what we know, who we know, our expertise, our networks, and based on an acceptable risk, because we also have to have certain appetite for risk and how much you can afford to lose. So based on your affordable loss, how much can you move, where the next hop can take you. And this next hop can take you to a set of stakeholders. And this stakeholder interaction gives you a newer set of resources, which will lead to some commitments, which can then elevate you. It can propel you to the next step. So this is the journey that they have scripted out, carved out, saying that this set of resources, then to the interactions leading to commitments, will then lead you to the next cycle, next cycle of pilots, which can then be a bigger set of change that you can bring on onto this. And you will need to bring in what is called the concept of pivoting. In the startup terminology, pivoting is all about, hey, I don't just keep, attacking a problem or a block if it is there. I then think, what is the plan B? You have to change. If this is not working, can I do something different? If my market in the textile industry is not working, can I do something about a chemical industry or a dairy industry? So we need to think about the alternatives which are possible, and then go about meeting the right kind of stakeholders there, building on the commitments. The net new goals will automatically emerge through this process of change, and it will lead to where we want to end up in.
I want to add one more thing.
Sure.
Very briefly, you earlier brought about sustainable development goals. I think now in the current context, it has become so important that the new leaders have to pivot to sustainable development goals as much or as often as possible, because it's not just going to kind of define how we kind of impact the environment. It also defines the success of the individual in creating a strategy which is all inclusive, all encompassing, right? Yeah. So I think SDG, or Sustainable Development Goal, is another thing that the new generation of leaders have to pivot more than ever before. Yeah.
True. I don't want to conclude this session, firstly, but when we talk about women leaders, and in my journey, I have seen women leaders. In the past, I used to see them emulate men and become like somebody, but hearing you all, I feel like that authentic self, I think nobody else can bring better than women leaders can. I mean, and I think the way change is happening in this space can help us be our authentic selves even more, because we are, as we said, a natural in resolving conflicts, co-creating everything. We try to bring together. It's not our change. It's our change, right? It is not your change versus my change. That ego thing doesn't come to us, as we said, we want to make the journey more fun. a diverse way of the way our thought process works, or the alternatives we bring into the game. I think as women leaders, this change has happened to women leaders, that we are ourselves more, and I think that will inspire a lot more people to be themselves and be successful. And in a crisis mode, maybe that command and control, that alpha way of working works, but what we have seen nowadays, the changes which are coming in, be it digitalization or sustainability, these are the primary ways in which the change will impact organizations, which we are seeing. In that, I feel like it is not just skill. You are learning. Every day you have to learn. You have to unlearn. You have to reskill, and your mindset is getting touched. So I would say, it's so very important to imbibe the feminine qualities. I think it is irrespective of being a leader who is a man or a woman. If they have these qualities, they will be able to tide through the change, because organizations don't change, individuals do. Thank you.